Okay, now let's see the classification of proteins. First is by chemical composition. Okay, so we are classifying proteins on the basis of chemical composition. So the first one is simple protein. Simple protein किससे बने होते हैं? Alpha amino acids से. So these are composed of chains of amino acids unitorily. ठीक है? So they're just composed of alpha amino acids. और जब इनको hydrolyze करेंगे, so they will produce the same alpha amino acids on hydrolysis. So what are the examples? Egg albumin, which is present in the white of egg. Then gluten in wheat, oxygen in rice, keratin in nails, horns, etc. Okay, these are some of the examples of simple proteins. Then the next one is conjugated. Conjugated मतलब किसी के साथ में है, right? So conjugated proteins are composed of simple protein and a non-protein part. So simple protein के साथ में एक non-protein material भी है. That non-protein material is called as prosthetic group or cofactor, right? So conjugated में क्या है? The simple protein along with the non-protein part, which is called as prosthetic group or cofactor. Now, what is the main function of this prosthetic group? It is to control the biological function of protein. So this is the main use of prosthetic group, to control the biological function of protein. For example, we have nucleoproteins. So ये जो nucleo word है, this tells you the prosthetic group. So here the prosthetic group is nucleic acid. न्यूक्लियोप्रोटीन्स है तो प्रोटीन के साथ न्यूक्लिक एसिड साथ में है तो न्यूक्लियोप्रोटीन्स. ठीक है. सो प्रोस्थेटिक ग्रुप इज न्यूक्लिक एसिड व्हिच इज प्रेजेंट इन द न्यूक्लियस ऑफ द सेल. देन फॉस्फोप्रोटीन्स. फॉस्फोप्रोटीन्स में प्रोटीन्स के साथ में क्या है? फॉस्फोरिक एसिड रेसिड्यूज आर देयर. सो लाइक योर दिस केसिन इन मिल्क, that can be an example. Then lipoproteins. Lipo word comes from lipids. So here the prosthetic group is lipid. ना जैसे lecithin है. So that is a lipoprotein. Then we have chromoproteins or metalloproteins. So metallo word comes from metal. So generally some metal atoms like iron, copper, cobalt, magnesium are present. Like we have hemoglobin. Hemoglobin में क्या होता है? Iron. It is a complex of iron. Then we have this chlorophyll, which is a complex of magnesium. Magnesium is present in chlorophyll. और chromoproteins में क्या होता है? Coloring matter होता है. ठीक है. जैसे generally some coloring matter pyrrole derivative is there. So conjugated proteins are simple protein plus the non-protein part, which is called as prosthetic group, and this prosthetic group kind of controls the function of the protein. Then you have the third type, derived protein. Derived. So these proteins are the degradation products which are obtained by partial hydrolysis. किसका partial hydrolysis? Simple या conjugated proteins का. ठीक है. So simple and conjugated proteins को जब partially hydrolyze करते हैं, so बीच में जो products बनते हैं, they are derived proteins. So they are degradation products of simple and conjugated proteins obtained by hydrolysis of these. For example, when you hydrolyze a protein, what do we get? We get metaproteins, or we may get proteoses, peptones, or polypeptides. Okay? Finally, the polypeptides break up into simple peptides, and these simple peptides further break up into simplest unit, that is the alpha amino acid. Alpha amino acid क्या है? Simplest unit. So these proteins, they break up into the simplest unit, that is alpha amino acid. But in between जो ये products बन रहे हैं partial hydrolysis के, ठीक है, complete hydrolysis will give alpha amino acid, the simplest unit. But जो partial hydrolysis products हैं, like metaproteins, proteoses, peptones, polypeptides, these are termed as derived proteins. Okay. So we have three types of proteins based on the chemical composition. Simple proteins, जिसमें सिर्फ अमाइनो एसिड्स होंगे, अमाइनो एसिड्स को लिंक करके जो बने हैं, और हाइड्रोलिसिस पे भी अमाइनो एसिड प्रोड्यूस करेंगे. Conjugated proteins, simple protein plus prosthetic group together make up a conjugated protein, and on hydrolysis they will produce these two units, simple protein and the non-protein part. Derived proteins are obtained on partial hydrolysis of simple or conjugated proteins. Just go through. Okay, now let's look at the other classification of proteins on the basis of molecular structure. Now the second classification is on the basis of molecular structure or shape. So the two types of proteins are fibrous and globular. है तो जैसे नाम से पता चल रहा है ये फाइबर लाइक होगा और ये ग्लोबुलर ग्लोबुलर मीन्स समथिंग स्फेरॉइडल इन शेप स्फीयर लाइक. So fibrous proteins are long thread like molecules and they tend to lie side by side forming fibers. ठीक है तो जैसे नाम है fibrous proteins तो they have thread like structures and they form fibers. Polypeptide chains may coil about one another and held together by strong hydrogen bonds. और जो polypeptide chains है, they may coil about one another in such a way that they are held together at certain points. ठीक है? They are held together at certain points through these hydrogen bonds. अब क्योंकि strong hydrogen bonds है between the polypeptide chains, तो उसकी वजह से क्या होता है? They are insoluble in water. Because polypeptide chains में certain points पे there are strong hydrogen bonds, उसकी वजह से क्या होता है? They are insoluble in water because of the strong interaction between the chains. But they are soluble in acids and alkalis, right? Insoluble in water, but soluble in acids and alkalis. So water के साथ interaction नहीं है because non-polar part जो होगा वो बाहर की तरफ होगा और इसलिए water के साथ interaction नहीं है. And generally ये जो fibrous proteins होते हैं these are the chief structural material of animal tissues. ठीक है? So the fibrous proteins are the chief structural material of animal tissues. For example, keratin. Keratin कहाँ present होता है? Keratin is a protein which is present in hair, nails, wool, feather, etc. Then myosin, another protein, is found in muscles. Similarly, collagen is another protein which is found in tendons, cartilage, bones, right? Then fibrin is present in silk. So these are some of the important fibrous proteins. तो ये ध्यान रखना जो भी एनिमल टिश्यूज है उसका स्ट्रक्चरल मटेरियल बेसिकली ये होता है और इसमें स्ट्रॉन्ग हाइड्रोजन बॉन्ड्स होते हैं पॉलीपेप्टाइड चेन्स में उसकी वजह से इट इज जनरली इनसॉल्युबल इन वाटर एंड थ्रेड लाइक फाइबर लाइक proteins structure, thread like or fiber like shape of proteins. Then globular is just the opposite. It is not thread like, it is spheroidal, sphere like. ठीक है तो यहाँ पर जो polypeptide chains होती हैं they are folded around itself only in three-dimensional spheroidal shape. So polypeptide chains क्या होती हैं इस तरह से fold होती है कि उनका जो shape है वो कैसे बन जाता है sphere की तरह. They are folded around itself. A polypeptide chain is folded around itself in such a way so that that gives a globular or a spheroidal shape. Now the areas of contact between these units are small क्योंकि वो अपने around ही coil कर रहे हैं. So जो areas of contact होते हैं units के बीच में they are small and hydrogen bonds are only internal. Within the polypeptide chains, certain points पे hydrogen bonding will be there. So that is why because within the molecule hydrogen bonds is there, intramolecular hydrogen bonding is there, so they are soluble in water. Unlike this, ठीक है ये insoluble थे, but these are soluble in water, acids, alkalis and salts. And interactions mainly जो globular proteins में होती है वो intramolecular hydrogen bonding will be there. Sulfur bridging, sulfur के bonds होंगे, so we call them as disulfide bridging. Then the dipole interactions or the van der Waal interactions are there. So जो polar part है उसके बीच में interactions होंगी. So dipolar interactions, or we can call them as van der Waal interactions. So what are the important examples of globular proteins? Enzymes. All enzymes are considered as globular proteins. All enzymes are globular proteins. Then hormones like insulin, ठीक है? इंसुलिन क्या करता है, जो ब्लड शुगर लेवल है उसको कंट्रोल करता है. इट सिक्रीटेड फ्रॉम पैनक्रियास एंड इट कंट्रोल्स द ब्लड शुगर लेवल. देन हीमोग्लोबिन, complex of iron which carries oxygen to the tissues. Then antibodies like gamma globulin. Antibodies क्या करती हैं? What do the antibodies do? They protect the body from outside infection. ठीक है? So these are some of the important examples of globular proteins. So globular proteins कैसे है? उसमें polypeptide chain इस तरह से coiled है कि एक spheroidal shape है, या globular means sphere like shape, right? And there are intramolecular hydrogen bonds within the molecule. Hydrogen bonds है, so it interacts with water. यहाँ पर between the chains there are hydrogen bonding, so it is insoluble in water. Just go through the examples. So I hope these are clear. ठीक है, तो इसमें फाइब्रस प्रोटीन्स के एग्जाम्पल और ग्लोबुलर प्रोटीन्स के एग्जाम्पल्स याद रखने हैं. So these are the classification of proteins.